Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Sens podcast. Uh, been a wild week. World Juniors wrapped up. We have a week and a half just over for the NHL games. It's been crazy. So we got it all. We're going to recap the World Juniors, talk about camp, and we got AHL news to talk about. But let's get into it. World Juniors wrapped up yesterday with a disappointing loss. If you're Canada fans, if you're American fans, well, congratulations. You guys won. And as a Sens fans, you're kind of in between. Sanderson, Clevin get your gold medals. They'll probably be back next year for that roster. Don't worry, Derek, I was not talking about the Senators in that tweet.
That's my reading tweets on the go kind of thing. I'm always looking at Twitter and doing 10 other things at the same time. And then I read a tweet really quick and I'm like, what are you talking about, Shane? Like, you really think Tyler Cleven's going to be on the Ottawa Senators next year? And then, quickly, a lot of people reminded me of what you were talking about real quick. So my bad.
Yeah, my phone died, and I was like, okay, well, I guess it's time for bed. So I didn't see your response until morning. I was just like, hey, it happens. It was like 11 o'clock or like 1 o'clock at night. So it's a pass.
Just ignore me.
But overall, Timmy Stützle was named forward of one of the forwards of the tournament. Obviously, Zegras rightfully deserving of tournament MVP. Devon Levi, goaltender of the tournament. But we're going to focus on Timmy Stützle. He played for Germany. Big reason Germany was even in the medal rounds or close to the medal rounds. He's not going to be back next year, even though he would be eligible. But, Germany has a lot to build off, and they have a strong international team coming up in the pipes the next couple of years.
Yes, they do. They can certainly build off that effort. I thought, is it Florence Elias? I know I'm completely.
I think it's like Florence Elias.
Elias,
yeah. Elias, I believe.
So, there we go. I was really impressed by Elias. I thought he had a phenomenal tournament playing center. It is kind of tough to judge some of these players because they were playing with Tim Stützle. And obviously, Tim Stützle was one of the best players in the entire tournament. So having him on their line, it'll be different next year for Florence Elias. And I don't know why I'm having so much trouble saying that guy's name, but he will probably be drafted next year as well. I know he was passed over. Was he passed over this year in the draft? I think he wasn't drafted this year. He might be too young. I thought he was a draft eligible this season. I think you're muted, Shane.
God, today has not been going well for me. Mike dies. Oh my God. I think he's like 2.5 weeks or a month older than Byfield.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So he was draft eligible. I thought I heard that somewhere. It might have been you that told me that, but he was draft eligible. So he was passed over this year. He won't get passed over next year. He was phenomenal at that tournament. And JJ Peterka, if he's eligible to return, I'd have to look at the age factor there to see when he turns 20. But if he can return, he'll be a huge factor. And Lucas Reichel, who couldn't participate in the tournament as well, should be a positive factor for Germany next season.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, with the Olympics up next winter, will be part of Team Germany. Like that's a crazy thing is that he's going to be part of Team Germany. Leon Draisaitl is going to be part of Team Germany. Peterka is most likely going to be part of Team Germany. And I believe a lot of the guys who won silver in 2018 are also going to be back. So Germany right now should not be discounted as a team to take lightly come the Olympics. And who knows if they do decide to have a World Juniors, if it's pushed back or whatnot, whatever they do, there's going to be some intense international hockey tournament between now and then. I would hope for us to see Timmy Stützle in the Olympics in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of more focused on him starting with the Ottawa Senators in like 9 days or whatever it is. But yeah, at some point in time, he will rejoin his German squad internationally. Being one of the best German players alongside Leon Draisaitl, as you mentioned. I think Moritz Seider will definitely be a huge part on that team as well. The Detroit Red Wings draft pick, similar to Sanderson, is Seider. He went much higher than people anticipated him going. So he'll be an interesting player for the German squad as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, so I looked up Peterka. He will be eligible to return next season, as his birthday is literally next Thursday, January 14th. So he's turning 19. He's kind of like Cam York, who turned 20 last night, and how Perfetti turned 19 on the 1st. So those two will be eligible to return next year's tournament. Don't know if Perfetti will. But, Järventie comes home with a bronze. Bittersweet tournament. He gets benched for the bronze medal game. We know it's a short tournament. Are we looking too much into it, or are we thinking, okay, he just wasn't in the right situation this year. He'll be back next year. He'll have a better tournament next year.
Yeah, I mean, we could make excuses for Robbie Järventie, but the fact is he really did not have a good tournament. He didn't have a good showing. He lacked intensity. He really just wasn't the player that everyone was expecting him to be coming in. I'm concerned, but not to the point where I'm concerned where I'm completely writing him off as a prospect. I think it's tough when you see someone like JJ Peterka performing the way that he did alongside, good friend and teammate Tim Stützle, who also happens to be an Ottawa Senator. When Ottawa, was right there and they had two opportunities to take JJ Peterka, it's tough not to focus on a situation like that. But it is also important to keep in mind Peterka is older. And aside from that, Robbie Järventie, he was one of the youngest players in the entire draft. He's still an 18-year-old kid. He'll be back next year, and hopefully he'll come back and kind of restore some of the confidence that the Sens fans had for this drafted prospect going into next year's tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, there's also another half season to play over in Liga. So again, we shouldn't look too much into it. We shouldn't take this as stone, but hopefully he can find his groove again in Liga and kind of bounce back and show us why we were so excited about him when the season first started. But honestly, a bittersweet tournament for Canada, 6-0 going into the game in gold medal game to get shut out. We all know, if you've been following the show long enough on Twitter, I'm not the hugest Byfield fan. I think he lacks the motor that you want from a top pick. And here's the thing. I think if you put Stützle on Team Canada as the number one, you put Byfield in Germany, I think Germany is worse off with Byfield than they would be with Stützle. And that's just my personal opinion. I was expecting him to step up to the plate in the gold medal game, and he didn't. But there's plenty of guys like that. I think Drysdale could have done a little bit more. We kind of saw a little bit more of a conservative Drysdale than we've seen before. But I think Knight is really the story of the game. He stood on his head. We got outshot 34 to 21 or something like that by the end of the game. Knight kind of regained his form. But, what's your takeaway from this entire tournament in that gold medal game for Team Canada?
I mean, the expectations were way too high for Team Canada. It's one game sample size. They had a really weak division, and I think that played a huge role into that game. They just seemed ill-prepared for the United States squad that came in and absolutely stole the first two periods of that game. I mean, it wasn't close. They had sole puck possession, that whole second period. It looked like they were on a power play at times, and it was 5-on-5. I thought structurally the U.S. was more prepared. I thought they were the more skilled team with players like Zegras. If Kirby Dach was in the conversation, if Alexis Lafreniere was in the conversation, we might be looking at a different result. But the fact is, Canada didn't have any difference makers. And whether you want to point the finger at Drysdale or point the finger at Quinton Byfield, who is a player that I think a lot of people had high expectations for being the second overall pick. he didn't perform, once again, when the lights were as bright as possible and the stage was set, ultimately Quinton Byfield did not perform. And, take that as you will. I still think he has a very, very high NHL season, and I'm not ready to write him off based on one tournament. But at the same time, it's now a collection of international tournaments that Quinton Byfield has underperformed at. And the only place he's really performed well at, aside from his development leading up to, has been the OHL, where he's very dominant there. But I just don't see a second overall player when I look at Quinton Byfield, at least when I look at the sample size from the collection of international tournaments that he's played at. He's playing with way too short of a hockey stick, which is one thing that kind of irritated me prior to the draft. He's forcing himself to kind of hunch over and play with a short hockey stick because that's what he's comfortable with. So he's sacrificing, a lot of reach and also sacrificing a skating position as well. So he's playing in kind of a down crunched position that doesn't give him full mobility of his upper body. He's not overly physical, and when he tries to be, it's not overly effective. He doesn't win puck battles, and as you alluded to, it's the motor problems that are probably his biggest issue at this point. And it probably sounds like I hate Quinton Byfield right now. And like I said, that's not the case. What I'm saying is he's going to need a lot of seasoning.
Agreed. And I mean, here's the thing, like Byfield has a lot of potential, and everyone keeps talking about potential, and you always draft on potential. But I've, being able to watch him in the OHL, he had 6 games, not last year, but the year before with the playoffs against Ottawa. He had 2 points in 6 games. And most of the time when he was on the ice, Kevin Ball was on the ice. And he got shut down because we saw it. He can be physical, but he's not. And you mentioned the stick. I had no idea that he actually played with a shorter stick than he should be. So that's not a good thing. But he was benched. Like, he was a healthy scratch for the gold medal game last year. And I remember that, and to me, that was a big red light, like a big red flag. You're projected to be the second overall pick. You have a guy that is supposed to go in front of you who's been leading this team, and you're benched. You're in the press box, and I know people are going to say, oh, his age, he's the youngest player, this and the other thing. Who cares?
Yeah, like, we're talking about 6 months. I mean, we're not talking about talking about anything substantial. We're talking about 6 months.
There's a couple of like 16-year-olds at the tournament who had a better tournament than Byfield did. Outside of
Beniers was far and away better than Byfield. Lambert on the Finns was far and away better.
There was a Slovak guy. I can't remember his name. He was 16.
Yeah.
Outside of Byfield's one game where he had 6 points, he was invisible. And if I'm a Kings fan, I'm a little bit worried. I know it's a small tournament, but from what I've seen of Byfield, like, I'm very worried about how much hype this person has gotten because of his size and how he's just been such a big kid, how he's dominated his age groups for years, that he hasn't actually had to work the same as someone, who kind of grew into that. I think that's kind of what we've seen is, players who grow into their size at, 18, 19, have a harder work ethic than guys who are just huge by the time they're, 18 or have been big for the previous years. And it's it is a knock on Byfield, but I was expecting something big, and, he had 2 open nets and missed them. But with Knight on the wide, like he's playing tennis.
Yeah, and I think, the most hurtful thing when it comes to Byfield is maybe not even his own performance, but just how he was outperformed by many players that were drafted after him. I think Drysdale, who you alluded to, maybe didn't have the greatest night last night, but, in a whole, he had a pretty decent tournament. But Anton Lundell, like, he's been dominant. He's been Finland's best player far and away. He was drafted 12th overall. Would you not prefer, if you're redrafting today, would you not prefer to go with the safe choice than to draft on maybe potential just because Quinton Byfield skates like the wind? I mean, and of course, Tim Stützle, we're not going to forget mentioning his name when it comes to the draft, but he outperformed Byfield like far and away.
Byfield wouldn't even be and it's crazy to say that we are like 3 months post draft, and Byfield would probably not even crack the top 10. It's very possible that he could drop out of the top 10 if we were going to do a redraft.
And again, people are probably going to say that, we have this biased perspective because we're Sens fans and we have some kind of hate on for Byfield just because he was picked by LA ahead of Tim Stützle. That's not the case. Like I said before, I still have very high expectations for Quinton Byfield when he reaches the NHL level. But, you can't discount what you've seen over now a collection of international appearances where he's just been completely absent, aside from one kind of 6-point blow up game where it looked like he might sort of rewrite things and change his tournament. And then just kind of fell flat after that once again.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it has something to do with the fact that he was picked by LA. I've literally had issue with Byfield being the second overall pick dating back to last October. I had Rossi ahead of Byfield. And I still think that, if Byfield's not Canadian or American, hell, I don't even think if he's American, he would do much different. I think if you were to replace Byfield with Lundell, Stützle, Rossi, even Holtz or Raymond in Canada's lineup, they are far better of a team than they would be with Byfield.
Yeah, Raymond and Holtz both had phenomenal tournaments. That's what I mean. Like a lot of these players that were selected after Byfield have kind of proven themselves already. They've proven their selection, and it was a loaded draft at the top. Like these players are going to go on to become star players in the NHL. A lot of them will. It was an absolute loaded draft, and if the number 2 overall pick is the guy that's the bust out of this, because not all of them are going to go on to be star players. It happens every year. That's a huge miss from the LA Kings perspective. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen. It's way too early to say that. But at the same time, is there cause for concern at this point? Yes.
100%. And I mean, who knows? Maybe this year, the fact that he hasn't played a meaningful game since March, maybe it hurt him a little bit. He was going against guys who have been playing, but most of Team Canada hasn't been playing. So I don't know how far of an excuse that is. So, hey, maybe he goes to LA and he shows us all wrong. But right now, I'm not riding the Byfield train at all. I have it parked in the station, just, it's being worked on and it'll go when it goes. But with that being said, they've already come out with next year grouping. If you don't remember, next year's World Juniors will also be in Red Deer. So it's Canada, Finland, Germany, Czech Republic, and Austria. And Red Deer, it's the US, Russia, Sweden, Slovakia, and Switzerland. So basically the bottom 2 seeds flip basically for both divisions. I think it's stupid how they have this. So it's basically Edmonton is 3, 2, 3, 6, 7, 10. Red Deer is 1, 4, 5, 8, 9. Does it not make more sense to do even and odd? Like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then 1, 3, 5, 7, 9? Like, does that not make more sense if it's how you finish? Do odd and evens? Like, what?
They've always got to complicate it in, some way, shape, or form. But yeah, who knows how these people put these things together. There's also some really head-scratching rules that they have at the IIHF as well. The whole crease violation, I was kind of ranting on Twitter about that, where they stop the play to call someone for skating through the crease. And it's like, are you kidding me? You're going to stop the play for that? It's ridiculous. So, there's a few IIHF things that are just flat out, they don't make sense. They make absolutely no sense. But shifting gears a little bit, what did you think of Jake Sanderson's performance in that gold medal winning game? I know from a Team Canada perspective, it's a tough pill to swallow, but you can't help but, from a Sens perspective, you can't help but watch the top prospects there. So how did you feel about Sanderson? Maybe not specifically last night, but over the course of the tournament.
The fact that he was probably one of the youngest players outside of Beniers, I think he was one of the youngest players on this Team USA roster, and there's a good chance that he will be back. Same with Beniers and Clevin. There's a good chance that some of these guys are back next season. I loved it, or next tournament. He was fantastic. Outside of Cam York, he was arguably their best defenseman outside of York. Thrun made some really nice plays. We remember that pass, that everyone thought it was Sanderson.
Yeah.
To Zegras, Hellenson had some good plays. Like they had their defense
partner. Yeah.
Like they had good plays, but I think overall Sanderson was the best player outside of Cam York on that defensive squad. Pretty sure he ended up playing the most minutes in the gold medal game, second most among defensemen behind York. He's going to wear the C next year.
Yeah. So yeah, when you're talking about, on the contrary, we were just talking about Quinton Byfield and his sort of inability to rise to the occasion when the lights are, the brightest. It's almost reverse for Jake Sanderson. We've seen the best of Jake Sanderson, and I think he saved his best performance for the gold medal game. That's when he was at his best. He was arguably US's best player outside of Trevor Zegras last night. I think, ahead of Cam York, he had the most minutes, as you alluded to. He was just rock solid defensively. He made some really solid plays offensively. I thought there was one occasion where I criticized him for bobbling a puck, and it was like right at the beginning of the game where he had a little bit of white ice and he had a little bit of skating room and he didn't quite know what to do with it. But after that, he settled down and he just looked very confident. He won basically every single puck battle that he was in. He made it impossible for Team Canada to get to the front of the net. They just really didn't have any solid chances against Spencer Knight, and large in part is thanks to number 8, Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, USA had a game plan, and I know I was a little bit vocal about the whole barrel thing being classless. I stand by that. I don't care if it's a barrel or a trash can. If it's a locker room thing, it stays in the locker room, because you bring that out, people are going to react to it a certain way. I think it's a bad look for USA Hockey and for Lehman and that group of kids. Obviously, I don't think Sanderson's that kind of guy. I know they're caught in the moment and whatnot. But overall, USA deserved to win that game. Spencer Knight stood on his head. Canada had chances. Byfield missed 2 open nets. They got the bounces, and that's basically it, right? The Turcotte goal was a beautiful play. They controlled the play in the first period. The Zegras goal was an unfortunate bounce on the back of the net. You can't win them all. It's unfortunate. USA deserved to win, and it just means they'll come back next year. It's going to be a lot tougher, and we won't have as many guys returning.
Yeah, I thought Team Canada's best player was probably the goaltender, Devin Levi. I thought he had a calm, cool, collected mentality playing that game. And I thought maybe he would be overwhelmed going in. Wasn't the case at all. He gave them every opportunity to win that game, but they had absolutely nothing offensively. Very little attack. As you alluded to, they missed a couple of open net opportunities when they did have a chance. But US deserved to win. They were the better team. They had the higher talented players, I think, in Zegras, definitely in Zegras, Turcotte up front. They had a few players that just had that it factor. Even Caulfield at times. I know he had an underwhelming performance when it comes to stats, but he had a whole lot of opportunity. He just reminds me of Cam Atkinson a little bit.
I just think the guys kind of showed up, though their top players showed up. Canada's didn't. Outside of Dylan Cousins and maybe McMichaels, forward-wise, and Byram on the back end, no one else really showed up. It was I thought, maybe we would see a guy like Tomasino step up like he has, or Jack Quinn or Zary, and it's just it hasn't. And it didn't happen. And, unfortunately, hey, who knows if they were getting ready to play the game in half an hour tonight, who knows what the outcome will be, and that's the reason why they play the games. But overall, like, it was a good tournament for Canada. Next year is going to be really interesting to see who they bring, what kind of team they ice. But it's a disappointing end. Hey, they still got silver, and it's kind of hard to be upset when you've medaled almost every year in the last decade and a bit.
No, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, it was, at the end of the day, it was just a lot of fun to watch hockey again and to kind of get us ready for the NHL season, which seems super weird to say at this stage, because generally we're in the midst of the NHL season when the World Juniors is on. So it's something that kind of leads us into the World Juniors and kind of gave Tim Stützle a little bit of a test ride before he arrives at Sens camp, which I think is due to happen on the 9th or 10th, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess the 10th, because the 9th is his last day of quarantine, if I remember correctly.
So he'll be there on the 9th, and Ottawa could get to work in terms of where they're going to place him, who they're going to play him with. Who do you think his first line mates could be or should be?
They're most likely going to be Derek Stepan and probably like Connor Brown.
So 2 veteran players. I think that makes the most sense too. So putting him on what will probably be the second line, I think we could say, with Stepan, a guy with tons of experience, who's going to wear an A this season for Ottawa, and Connor Brown, who I thought would be wearing an A this season for Ottawa, but they gave it to Goodbranson and Stepan instead. Either way, 2 experienced players. I don't know that they have huge offensive capabilities, so he might be required to drive that line. But I do agree with you. I think that's probably who he's going to play with.
Connor Brown was probably the most consistent forward all year. I think he finished second in points behind Tkachuk. I think Connor Brown's a better point getter than we've been able to see in his career, and playing with a guy like Stützle should improve that. But we're going to take a quick break. We got a little break for a commercial from Bar Breakdown, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. When we come back from that, we're going to dive into Sens camp. A lot of big news coming out over the last couple of days from DJ Smith and co. We all know unfortunately, there hasn't been any live streams or anything coming from camp, so visuals are a little bit low. But we'll be right back, and we'll have Sens camp right around the corner.
Did you know that your favorite band also loves your favorite hockey team? If you love hockey and you love music, you're going to love Bar Down Breakdown, a podcast that explores the crossover between alternative music and the sport we love, hockey.
Every NHL player wants to be in a band, and every band guy wants to be a pro athlete.
With guests from all over the globe, come along with us as we interview some of the most captivating names in alternative music and talk about why we love hockey and how it's influenced us.
There was for a few seconds a thought of maybe we should wear Montreal jerseys, and the NHL was like, I think you should stay neutral. And we're like, yeah, you know what, you're probably right.
So tune in every Tuesday on the Hockey Podcast Network, where we'll have a brand new guest and a unique look into the bridge between hockey and music.
And we are back. Just a reminder, we do have our customized sports jersey giveaway kit going on. You can head over to our Twitter, Instagram to enter. Super easy. Let us know who you want. Tag 3 friends. And winner will be picked up at the end of the month. Pick whatever reverse retro jersey kit you want. It doesn't have to be Senators related. But with that being said, we are a week and a half away. We are basically, 9 days away, 10 days away right now from Ottawa's first game of the 21 season against Toronto. Big news coming out of camp today. Anisimov and Colin White have been the 2 most impressive players at camp, according to DJ Smith. Who would have thought of that going into camp?
I mean, it really makes me wonder. They're pumping Anisimov's tires an awful lot. Colin White as well. Could it be kind of just a confidence boosting thing that they're doing with White? It certainly could be. We talked about the Pierre-Luc Dubois rumors last week, and I just kind of wonder, if if Columbus is interested in Colin White, are the Senators trying to send signals via the media that Colin White's kind of refound his game and looks like the real thing, and really kind of pumping his tires? And the same thing could be said with Anisimov. When you look at the sheer number of centers that the Senators have, they won't be able to play everyone this year. They won't be able to sort of integrate Logan Brown or Josh Norris with any consistency because they have too many centers as is. So, I kind of wonder, and I was wondering out loud on Twitter, whether the Senators are pumping Anisimov's tires for the simple fact that they want to trade him, or is he genuinely a standout in camp? And then they showed the highlight of the goal that he scored against Matt Murray in training camp. And he kind of went forehand, backhand. It was a great move around the pad. And then I was thinking maybe it's the real thing. Maybe he's just genuinely having a really good camp.
He had 15 goals last year. I don't think, I know he's been bad by the metrics and whatnot, but I think it's actually genuine that Anisimov has come in. He's healthy. He's ready to go, and he's having a good camp. It's the same thing with White. I think this is a legitimate, they're asking who the best players are in camp right now and who's impressed DJ Smith the most. And I think DJ Smith is being honest and saying that, Anisimov and Colin White have kind of shown that they want to play. And I don't think DJ Smith has elaborated in what kind of role he's given Colin White. He elaborated on Paquette playing on the wing to allow more people at center. So who knows? I don't really know what they're going with Colin White. Maybe he is playing wing. We'll find out later. But, I think it's a legitimate, these are two players that have stood out to me since camp started a couple of days ago. And I think it's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it is positive for sure. I just kind of wondered if there was an ulterior motive, suggested kind of attached to that. But I'm probably just reading into things and maybe being a little bit hopeful that Ottawa is indeed targeting Pierre-Luc Dubois. But at the same time, it would be great if Anisimov came and, showed that he could kind of recapture some of what he brought to the Chicago Blackhawks back in the, Kane and Taves prime days when he played with them. Anisimov, like you said, 15 goals is nothing to kind of turn away from. I don't think he had barely any assists to go with that because he didn't have very many points. So was it just the goal scoring? I don't know what
he had 20 points. He had 20 points in 40 some games, but he had 15 goals, 5 of them on the power play, 5 assists. I think Anisimov, maybe there is a little bit of pumping the tires and trying to gas him up a little bit so teams are a little bit more interested in it. But you can also say the same thing about Logan Brown that they're doing right now. Saying that he's working really well on the power play. He's doing this and that very well, but he still needs to show me what he can do, and how he performs over the last 5 days of camp is really what's going to tell me if he's going to be in camp. Which means, if he doesn't, then what does it mean for his value? What does it mean where if he doesn't succeed those last 5 days of camp, will they look to move on from him?
There's a lot of interesting storylines, and I knew there would be with this camp, with just the number of players that are invited to it. And it really is a matter of us probably reading into everything that we're seeing right now. It's early on until we have the lineups in front of us, and it's January 15th. I think it's all kind of guesswork, from our end, from a fan perspective, because we really have no indication of what they plan on doing. They were giving Josh Norris reps with Tkachuk and Dadonov initially. And I think Sens Twitter read into that and, suggested that Norris was going to make the team over Logan Brown. And then, 2 days later, now Logan Brown is the guy between Tkachuk and Dadonov. So they are trying different things on, and they're going to do that for the duration of camp. I'm really interested to see where things go when Paquette and Coburn and Stützle and Stepan all join camp, and we've got the whole group together, and they're going to be forced to kind of separate the two groups. So that will be a little bit more telling, and we'll be able to read into it a little bit more when they do that.
Yeah, and I mean, it should be sometime next week. We're still missing Tierney, Abramov, and Balcers, I'm pretty sure, are still out with injuries. And it makes for interesting Storylines, obviously, camp. We haven't gotten a lot out of camp. Not a lot of visuals because they haven't allowed reporters in, and they haven't set up a live stream. And I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. It'd be great to be able to go in there, but apparently, provincial rules won't allow it right now. So it is what it is. I know we've seen people advocate to get some others into the media room or media cycle, which would be great. But right now, I just don't see it happening. But Brandstrom is missing, and that's the big thing. Nothing about Brandstrom due to his quarantine. We've talked about it before. If a guy like, and we haven't really heard much from DJ Smith about how that defense is holding out outside of Shabbat and Kachuk, or Shabbat and Goodbranson. I wonder if they're optimistic that he'll come back in whenever he does and show that he belongs on the roster.
I have my doubts when it comes to Eric Brandstrom's ability to crack this roster. I just think there's too many bodies in front of him that he'd have to come to camp, and this whole COVID situation probably is going to hurt his chances even more. But I thought he was a long shot to begin with to make this roster, and I think he's probably a longer shot now. We'll see. I've been wrong many times before, so I would gladly be wrong when it comes to Brandstrom. I hope nothing but the best, and I hope he comes to camp and shows that he's an NHL-ready player. But I'm not sure if that's the case, and I'm not sure if the Sens are really in the business of rushing players that they don't feel are NHL-ready players, especially in that position as a defenseman. When you have one of the bigger roles on the team, it's easier to transition a winger than it is a center, and it's easier to transition a center than it is a defenseman. So, it's one of the hardest transitions to come into the league for a young player like Brandstrom.
100%. And it leads to the next question really is the AHL is starting up. There's going to be 5 divisions: Belleville, Manitoba, the Jets affiliate. You have the Toronto with the Marlies and Laval Rockets, who have come out and said that they're going to be playing center. Montreal's affiliate. We should be starting to see some players cut sometime next week if they feel like there's going to be a training camp opening up with Belleville over the next 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So Stutzla is supposed to be here on the 10th, which would be sometime early next week. The same with Tierney and, Bromoff and Balsers. There's a good chance they send a Bromoff Balsers down to Belleville and just tell them, hey, get ready for Belleville camp. I don't see them doing that with Balsers, but definitely a Bromoff. Brandstrom could be in a similar situation where they just tell him, like, hey, you're not making it. We're going to send you down to Belleville camp and go from there.
Yeah, and maybe lump Formanton in that group as well. But I think, a lot of the players that we were hopeful that could crack the roster, as we alluded to, the Senators went out and they got a whole bunch of veteran players that are probably going to make the roster, at least initially. We've got that taxi squad. So you don't want the young players sitting in the taxi squad. So that's, the reasoning for going out and getting some of these veteran players. So yeah, you're going to have a number one line of something like Balsers, Abramov, and Formanton down in the AHL. Most likely, maybe Josh Norris joins them. Maybe Logan Brown joins them. It's going to be a really good team. I'm just as excited to see what Belleville puts together for a team, especially with Ridley Gregg. He's a player that we really haven't talked a lot about, but with no OHL season on the horizon this year, Ridley Gregg, I expect, will be in Belleville. I could be wrong about that, but what do you think about that?
He's allowed to play in Belleville up until a season is announced for the Brandon Wheat Kings out in the Western Hockey League, but he's still dealing with COVID-related issues. Apparently, that's why he wasn't at camp. So they may have signed him and been like, hey, you're going to go down to Belleville. You're not going to come to camp, rest up, go down to Belleville, and you'll get started at Belleville if there is no camp. I think there's hope that won't be the case for him. I think there's hope that he can stay in Lethbridge is I think where he's at, and he'll be able to go to Brandon and play out of Brandon instead of having to go to Belleville and then have to quarantine for a little bit in Belleville, and then have to go to, quarantine Brandon before he's able to play. But if he's on the team, I still don't think he plays much unless they want to put him in the lineup. I just don't see it happening.
Well, I don't know. I see him, he's one of their prominent prospects. He was a first-round pick right at the end of the first round from this previous draft. So I feel like they'll want to get him some minutes. From a fan perspective, I'm just excited to see this kid play. I've seen the highlights. I've heard the style that he plays with and the type of tenacity that he plays with. And I'd love to see it in Belleville, even if it's just for a few games. So my hope is that they do give him a few reps in a top 6 role that, we could see what this kid could be in the future. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately, at the World Juniors with how everything unfolded with the COVID, and who knows if he would have made that team. Maybe the Canadians could have used a player like Greg last night, someone who, wouldn't be afraid to get in the American's face and mix it up a little bit. But, aside from that, it would be nice to just to see Belleville hockey again, just as it would Ottawa hockey again. So I know we're both big Belleville fans, so I'm looking forward to both the seasons firing up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested because they have the AHL TV, and I've heard really bad things about the AHL TV. Sound quality, visual quality. They really need to figure out what to do if they want money. I know they 3 teams aren't playing. You have the Milwaukee Admirals, who were the favorite in the West to go to the Calder Cup last year, who were the Nashville affiliates. There's rumors that they're joining up with the Chicago Wolves, which happen to be Carolina's affiliate now. You have the Charlotte Checkers, who I believe are joining up out in or Springfield. Springfield's joining up, which I believe is Florida's affiliate, or no, St. Louis's affiliate. I think is joining up with Syracuse, and then I think the Charlotte Checkers are joining up with Vancouver. Something along those lines. You're going to have 3 teams affiliating with each other. None of them obviously affecting Belleville, but it makes an interesting storyline. If, for example, if Laval decided not to play, because they're not owned, they're owned by Montreal, so it's a little bit different. But if they were like, hey, we're not going to play this year, imagine having Ottawa, like a Montreal and Ottawa joint farm team. Imagine what that would like. Imagine having like a player on your farm, like that you're teammates with, that gets called up to Montreal, and then you get called out to Ottawa, and you're playing each other that night in the NHL, and you're like, what the hell? Like it just.
That's a wild kind of 1 year only scenario that we're going to see.
Well, they've done it in the past, and they've tried to push it away, which is why Seattle is expected to announce an AHL team some point between now and the start of the NHL regular season. AHL regular season. The AHL is not allowing them to split squads with another team, but it's interesting to look at how this used to be the norm, where like 2 teams would split an AHL team because the AHL teams weren't looked as like a competitive team. They were just a development league, and how things have changed within the last like decade.
Yeah. And personally, going to the Belleville games, they're really exciting games. I mean, it's a great product. So like you said, if they're able to kind of up their marketability a little bit and provide fans with a proper stream and, proper video quality, and really put some money into the arenas and make them much more marketable, then you have a product that's already there. It's a very good product. The AHL is not just a fighting league like it used to be. It's, it's not just a development league like it used to be. It's a really good competitive league to watch, and it's fun hockey to watch.
That's for sure. I mean, it's the same thing with the East Coast leagues, or like those kind of leagues as well. But with that being said, last segment of the episode, sponsors. It was just announced that Bell Media will be having their logo presented on the black helmet. So basically the home helmet for the Ottawa Senators, and then Canadian Tire Center will be on the road, which makes a lot of sense. We're not going to have a random blue logo on our red or on our white helmet when it should be red. They'll be able to do a white logo on the black, so it should be fine. What's your opinion on this? And is it a 1 year? Like, do you think this is going to be a 1 year thing, or do you think the NHL? I mean, it's more than just helmets. The divisions are now being sold off for advertising.
I said this earlier. Anyone that thinks this is a one-off, this is a 1 year thing, is fooling themselves. Like, the NHL is not going to turn down money. And ultimately what's going to happen is fans are going to forget that it's there probably probably the first game of the regular season. Fans are not going to be talking anymore about Bell across the helmet or Canadian Tire logo across the helmet or the Scotiabank North Division. No, we're going to be focused on the hockey. We're going to be talking about the hockey, and people will forget it's even there. So the NHL is probably going to say, why not just cash in on this permanently? We need to make up for money that we lost from this, COVID situation. So I really, really have a hard time believing that this is a 1 year thing. I think it's sticking around, and I think they're easing people into it by saying, oh, don't worry, it's a 1 year thing. It's just a one-off.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's anything close to a one-off. I think really within the next 3 years, we'll have a logo on the jersey. I know as much as I love jerseys, and I know there's a lot of, traditionalists, and that's the problem. You cannot be a traditionalist league and hope to survive. It's not how it goes anymore. The NBA, no problems with their logo on their jersey, because you don't buy the jerseys with the logo on it. And I think that's really all it is that you're not going to go to buy an Adidas jersey at, the Sens store or at Sports Check, and it's going to have Canadian Tire on the shoulder. It's not going to do that. You're going to get a blank jersey that has, the Adidas logo on the back and the team logo at the front, and that's it. You can buy the Authentics. And I would not be surprised if they were made available with the logo on it. And I wonder how much that would affect jersey sales, honestly.
Yeah, again, I think initially there will be a reaction, and then people will just kind of forget it's there. It'll just be part of the uniform. It'll kind of blend in. Same with the Bell thing across the helmet. I'm hopeful that it's not a blue. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Leafs are going with a Scotiabank logo on their white road helmet, and it's red. And it's going to look horrible.
Well, that's why I think Bell is going to go on. The reason why Bell's at home is they can do a white logo.
Yeah, they did it on the Habs as well. They've got a white on the blue Habs helmet, and it looks fine. Like, who cares?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same thing where Bell is a white on the black instead of it being blue on the home or on the white. It just instead of changing your colors to a red to match Rogers, you're going to change it to white, put it on the home. And then Canadian Tire, which is already red, can be on the road. It makes perfect sense. I wish Scotiabank changed it to blue for the road jerseys. It would for the road have a lot nicer. But personally, spending an Adidas jersey without a blank Adidas jersey with only the Adidas on the back, or $160 for a blank Adidas jersey that had the Canadian Tire logo on the corner, on the right corner. Would you really care? Would you take the $40 discount? Would you make that big of a stink of it? Oh, I don't want the Canadian Tire thing on my jersey. I'm going to pay the extra $40 to not have it there.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'd have to get past it. It would take me a minute. I would have to have my kind of outburst and reaction initially. I would get past it pretty quickly. I don't think it's, something that ultimately is going to change the look of the jersey. Again, as long as the colors and everything kind of mesh and they blend in, like the NBA does it, like you said, perfectly well, where it just kind of blends in. You don't even really notice it there. If they do something like that, it is what it is. You have to do it financially. So it is going to happen. We're telling you right now, it's definitely going to happen in the future. I would not be surprised. They've got ads almost everywhere on the ice, not quite like they do out in Europe, but it's coming.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just the way it is. We see it everywhere now. And it also kind of leads into the next thing. We see, and NBA is always going to be the one that we talk about because the NBA has used this branding and used these ads perfectly. When are we going to see the NHL and NHL equipment providers start releasing signature gear? I know they can market it as, oh, these are the skates that McDavid wears. But there's a difference between saying, oh, these are the skates McDavid wears, and then saying these are, the CCM McDavid, McDavid 2s or McDavid Speed 1s kind of thing. Completely different marketing scheme because now players are going to be like, okay, well, I know he wears these, but now I have his name on it. There's a name. It's just like sticks. I know people who will only buy certain player sticks because it has their name on the stick. So why not move that to equipment where you can buy skates that have McDavid on them or gloves that have McDavid on them in, a wide variety of colors? I think it would be great.
Yeah, the NHL, I mean, they openly struggle with marketing their star players. I mean, it's something that the NBA does extremely well. Like when you're comparing the two leagues, the NBA probably does it better than anybody. Like you said, you have signature equipment. I know the NFL probably does it as well. I guess the difference being that anyone could wear shoes, but only, select people that play hockey wear, signature Connor McDavid skates or whatever. But in the broader sense, the NHL does a really, really poor job of marketing their top players. If you ask even a general hockey fan who the top 5 NHL players are, they could probably name McDavid and Crosby, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just skates. Like we've seen it with the NFL. J.J. Watt has his own, training shoe out of Reebok. So, you don't just have to do hockey equipment. You can do training equipment. You can do, the shoes and the apparel. You have I don't even know what his logo would be. Probably like a CM and a 97 kind of combined. And, you would be able to sell that instead of just having, gloves and skates. It's just a matter about how confident is CCM or Bauer willing to put money on, hey, I'm going to make you, here's a signature clothing collection. We're going to make big money. Let's do it.
Yeah, and I think, the other part to that argument is that maybe Connor McDavid isn't the most marketable person either because he just has like a robotic, flat personality.
He's too humble. You're going to need to go after a guy like Kachuk, like Matthew.
I want a little more in your face, flashy, not afraid to express opinions.
Subban would have been the perfect guy to start this off with. Ovechkin. The fact that Bauer,
Ovechkin, exactly.
Bauer didn't do this with Ovechkin when he first came into the league. Because if I remember correctly, he wore all Bauer when he first came into the league.
He had that signature look too. He had the drawstrings coming off the pant. He had Bauer everything.
Yeah, and he had
or was it CCM? Wasn't it CCM Vector?
Maybe I can't remember that far back.
I think it was CCM originally.
Either way, like he had the tinted visor. Yeah. He had the yellow skate, like the yellow skate laces. Like he had a look, and all it's going to take, it's not even going to take the NHL to do it. Because once a big company decides to do it, like let's say Bauer were to tell, Alexei Lafreniere, okay, we're going to sign you to this contract. You're going to only wear our gear. We're going to make your own line. Everything else is going to roll in. If they were, especially if they were prominent in the States, if they wanted to do this in the States, you do that with Austin Matthews. You go to Austin Matthews if you're CCM or whatever and tell him like, hey, here's an exclusive contract. We're going to pay you, I don't know, $100 million over 10 years. You're going to only wear, our brand, but we're also going to make your own brand that you can wear and you can sell and you get a profit off of that brand as well. And you're our brand. Like it's things like that where that could go a long way.
Yeah. They should start to enter that market, the apparel market. They should start to do things differently than they have because they just aren't doing a very good job, as I mentioned, of marketing their star players. And that's one avenue of growing the game, especially in the States. It's already huge in Canada, but that's the market that they miss the most. And they just they discourage personality basically in the NHL. It'd be so cool if players were able to just wear their general street clothes coming to games like we see NBA players. How many times do you go through your NBA Twitter and you look just for the outfits that players are wearing ahead of playoff games, and you're looking at their shoes and you're looking at kind of what branding they're wearing. I know when Kawhi Leonard was with the Raptors, New Balance, suddenly their sales in Toronto absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, New Balance, the most plain, boring looking brand that there is, became extremely popular. And that's because of players like Kawhi Leonard. So the NHL has to look at what the NBA is doing and try to capitalize on some of that and be more creative, think outside the box, and leave some of those traditions behind.
Yeah, I mean, the league cannot be traditionalist and continue to survive. It's that simple. We're going to have to see it. We're going to see it. We've seen it in the MLB where, unwritten rules, this, that, and the other thing, like things like that. Yeah, that I agree. NHL is a reactive league, not a proactive league, and they've been reactive way too long. But
yes.
we're gonna have to see something change in the NHL. And I mean, they've been profitable. They've been able to increase the league, and Seattle's gonna help, but they need to do more. And unfortunately, it's kind of out of their control. They can't go to Bauer and be like, "Hey, make this guy, a signature shoe or a signature skate or whatever." But it's going to take that kind of effort from them from one of those companies to kickstart it.
Yeah. They make themselves look Mickey Mouse in ways. And I think, whoever it was that just made that comment is dead on. They're very reactive, when it comes to social justice issues, when it comes to anything. The NHL is always waiting for the other leagues to make the first move, and then they react. And it's just, it has this Mickey Mouse feeling. Even when it comes to, the CBA negotiations that we just seen, it's like, oh, no, we're not playing a season. We want to ask for more from the players. And then it's like, actually, never mind. We'll just go with what we had. And it just makes it look so Mickey Mouse. You know what I mean? It's all reactive stuff. It's not stuff that they, thought about months down the road and, had a plan in place.
No, and I mean and that's the unfortunate part is I don't think this league actually looks 5 years down the road.
No, it's live for today mode.
Yeah, basically. But it's been an interesting week in the hockey community. A lot of things have gone in and out of the hockey world. It's only going to get more interesting next week as we hit our first slate of games, which next Wednesday, opening up with some games. Obviously, Ottawa's first game isn't until Friday. But if you want to hear more from myself and Derek, we just hopped on the hockey podcast. You'll be able to check it out. It's on their Twitter, or it's on their YouTube, Facebook page, Hockey Podcast. It'll be on, Spotify and whatnot. But upcoming, we're going to have a little bit more to talk about. We're going to dive into some way too early Olympic predictions and lineups over the next probably 2 months. So we have that coming up. And obviously, we're going to be talking about your Ottawa Senators and what's going on. But I'm excited for this season. It's literally a week away. Man, I can't wait. It's been so long since we've had Senators hockey that next Friday cannot come here quick enough.
Yeah, it's over 300 days now. So the countdown is officially at 9. And we look forward to talking about actual Ottawa Senators hockey in the next little while.
Yeah. And thank you guys for listening. It's always a pleasure. Follow us at Sens_hour on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, we have our customized sports giveaway going on, so definitely check that out. Follow Derek at dlee075 on Twitter. You can also check out his articles. He just released a new article today. I know with everything going on, sports aren't really in everyone's mind, but I realistically, we shouldn't really be distracted with what's going on, but we also need to remember to take a step back from the screens and kind of relax and focus on ourselves. So hopefully we can help you with that. But remember, he has a new article dropped. Follow him. He has Sens Shot, New Era Sens. Follow me, Shane_Ryan97, for all your hockey and sports needs. Playoffs, NFL playoffs are coming up, so you'll want to stay tuned. I got a couple things in the works. Hopefully that they all fall through. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, guys, thank you all for listening. Check out the Hockey Podcast Network if you already haven't. Fan of any other team. Full slate of stuff. But stay safe. Have a safe one. And we'll catch you back here with a new episode next Monday.
Take care.